Thank you all for coming. I'm Julie Ginfrido, class of 96 from Trinity, and then also master's 05 in economics. The Women's Leadership Council is proud to host today's Lunch and Learn on health and nutrition with Eliza Savage, class of 2010. For those of you that are new to the Women's Leadership Council, we provide a network of support for all Trinity women to connect with each other and our female identifying students. The WLC was founded by the female trustees in 2010 at the end of the celebration of 40 years of coeducation at the college. The council has grown from the original 40 members to close to 800, and we invite all alumni to join us. Programs like the one today are on topics for women and by women, and we are always open to ideas and suggestions for future topics and speakers. Membership is very easy. So in addition to participating in our programs, we ask that our members support the college with philanthropic support in any amount that is meaningful to you. One unexpected silver lining of the pandemic has been that it has allowed alumni, regardless of geography, to join us for virtual programs like the one today. Even as we begin to host in-person events again, we plan to continue to offer these virtual options as well. So a special thank you to Trish Kleetsat, class of 80, parent of 09 and 11, for her 11 years of service and dedication as the chair of the Women's Leadership Council. Together with Shakira Ramos Crespo of class of 02, I've also accepted the role of the co-chair of the Women's Leadership Council for the next 2 years. I've really enjoyed my involvement with the Women's Leadership Council and getting to know other women from across the country who have participated in events like this and who have come together to network. And also with the Trinity Venture Program on campus and being more involved in the college. So it's been a very nice experience. So if you'd like to do more with Women's Leadership Council, just contact Melissa Regan if you have questions or want more information. And so next, I'd like to introduce Eliza. And Eliza is with us today. She's class of 2010, and she's a registered dietitian with a lifelong passion for wellness. She has written for media outlets such as Women's Health, Well and Good, and Health, and is a published author. Prior to becoming a dietitian, Eliza worked in integrated marketing at Rondell and Hearst magazines, and her passion for health and wellness started at a young age and led her to a career in this wellness field. As a registered dietitian, she has worked at New York City's top hospitals, including NYU and Mount Sinai. She has also worked in private practice and consulted with multiple brands and as a nutrition expert. Eliza joined Verywell's commerce team in 2020, sharing her expertise to ensure that all nutrition and ingestible products recommended on Verywell are dietitian approved. In 2021, she moved over to manage all content on Verywell Fit. Eliza earned her BA in economics from Trinity and a master's in clinical nutrition from NYU. So with that, I welcome Eliza.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for the nice introduction, Julie, and thank you to Melissa. So let's get started. I guess I had a great introduction, so thank you, but a little bit about me. Yes, Trinity class of 2010. I graduated with a degree in economics and had studied languages and art and really didn't know what I wanted to do. But I went into publishing. I worked at Town and Country and then Women's Health, and then decided to go back to school, where I got my master's in clinical nutrition and then sort of dove headfirst into clinical and private practice. So again, I worked at a liver and kidney transplant clinic for a little bit at Mount Sinai, and then worked alongside gastroenterologists and different medical doctors at NYU Langone. This was sort of in addition to a private practice that I had on the side. And, after the birth of my first child, who is 2, I decided that I wanted to dive back into consulting and writing. And so I actually was approached to write my first book called Healing Through Nutrition. It's available on Amazon, and I'm happy to talk more about that at length with anybody. That sort of, set me up to pursue more of a career in media. And I, as Julie said, I went back full time on the commerce team at Verywell Fit. So basically managing all the products they recommend and making sure that they're all dietitian approved. And then, since March, I guess, I have been managing Verywell Fit content and strategy as a whole. So, I think that my time at Trinity served me well, setting me up to, have a bit of a business background. The language and arts definitely cultivated my creative outlet. And, here I am today. So what I want to talk to you about is basically just like nutrition and health hacks for women. Before we jump into this agenda, I just want to address how the pandemic and COVID life has affected our health for good and for bad. We may have less time commuting, more time to cook and exercise, and less socializing. However, maybe there's been more stress, more juggling, work and home responsibilities or childcare, and even a lack of motivation. And as we come out of this, which I'm so excited to say, and thank goodness, it's helpful to keep in mind that there are many ways you can prioritize health. What I discussed today can feel overwhelming for some and might be typical practices for others. I always caveat by saying that there's no one size fits all for nutrition, or even one size fits most. It's a constantly evolving science, and there's not one right way to do things. So maybe you love smoothies or matcha, or maybe you hardly eat vegetables and never work out, but honor where you are and start there. If you only take one or two things away from this chat, that's my goal. Always remember, it's best to speak with your individual healthcare practitioner or registered dietitian if you have specific questions about your own needs. Okay, so we will get into key nutrients for women: beverages, breakfast, snacks, eating out and dinner, digestive health, bone health, sleep, and then we'll have some time for Q&A. Throughout my career, I've worked with various populations. As I said, I worked with kidney and liver transplant patients. I've worked with very sick people in hospitals, but people I've spent the most time working with are actually women ages 15 to 17. So I'm fascinated in the changes that women go through in response to hormones and how this can be so individual for each woman. As you age, your body processes slow down naturally, for example. They naturally slow down. So for example, you might get periodic fatigue, mood changes, energy deficits, and digestion, energy, nutrient absorption, and this can lead to, weight gain over time. I feel like women say they're tired all the time, especially juggling jobs, motherhood, and regular stresses. However, specifically with menopausal or postmenopausal women, fatigue is the norm due to less sleep and changing hormones. Just a caveat that, I'm not sure what the age ranges of women on this call are, but this sort of encompasses where you might be, what to expect, and changes you can make now and in the future. So particularly with menopausal or postmenopausal women, with decreased estrogen and progesterone, your moods might fluctuate more than normal. And this is when doctors are more apt to use prescription drugs to treat what might be a diet-related issue. So since the body processes are slowing down, nutrition is really key to make sure things are running smoothly. Magnesium and probiotics can support this, and I will talk about those later. Digestive health really comes into play here. As you age, you might find that your digestive system is a little bit sluggish. You feel bloated more frequently. Your energy might be decreasing. This is particularly because B12, an energy supporting vitamin, is made in the gut, specifically in the small intestine. And as you age, there's something called the intrinsic factor, which converts B12 to the usable form of the vitamin. And this production decreases and absorption becomes poor. So, there are different ways that you can support a sluggish digestive system. Hormones are changing. For this reason, you may not be able to get away with how you used to eat. Estrogen and inability to process sugars can lead to abdominal fat and bloating. Portions are key. It's really important to support hormonal health, especially with, healthy fat intake. So we'll definitely get into that later. And bone health is really important. Okay, I'm just seeing we have all generations of Trinity alumni. Perfect, great. So this applies to everybody, and we'll get more into specifics. But bone health, I don't think enough younger women are really thinking about bone health from the get-go. So, you know, when you go to the doctor, they may load you with supplements, calcium, vitamin D, vitamin K, but why are you taking these? And are they really necessary? You know, calcium is actually leached from the bones in the body when there's not enough. So we need to think about, you know, supporting our bones. So let me just jump into the more actionable, interesting stuff rather than lecture you guys on science. But first, coffee. Coffee is one of my favorite things. So like many things in nutrition, the answer whether coffee is good for you, it depends. Depends on if the individual can tolerate it, how it's consumed, how much is consumed, and the source, among other things. You know, there are lots of benefits. So coffee is a potential antioxidant. In fact, the average American actually gets more antioxidants from coffee than fruits and vegetables. Antioxidants block the activity of chemicals known as free radicals, thus preventing them from causing harm in the body. So they basically, you know, block and defend everything like cancer, heart disease, etc. Typically, you'll think about having antioxidants in plant-based foods like fruits and vegetables, nuts and seeds, herbs and spices, but high-quality coffee may be a great source. Other benefits, it can lead to a short-term boost in brain function. So this includes improved mood, reaction time, memory, and cognitive function. It can boost metabolism and overall stamina, and lots of research shows that it can boost athletic performance. So these effects are short-term, and the more you drink, the more your body gets used to it and the effects die down. But there's also some really interesting research, particularly in the field of mental disorders and diabetes. Coffee may help prevent Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. So, but there are some sort of cons. You know, it can disrupt your sleep if it's too late in the day. It can cause you to be super jittery, and it can cause mood disorders. It's also really highly addictive and can lead to withdrawal symptoms. So I always recommend, you know, 2 cups max per day. I think one in the morning is plenty. But how to drink it is really important. So you want to avoid adding any artificial sweeteners, any pumped processed creamers or added sugars. Skip your venti. The body doesn't need that much caffeine at once. If you're sensitive to caffeine, try to have a cutoff time by noon. And just like I said before, the quality of the coffee that we drink is really important. Try to choose an organic variety, as coffee is one of the most pesticide sprayed products in the world. And if you feel like you don't get enough flavor, I always recommend adding cinnamon or cacao powder. Cinnamon is actually really helpful for regulating blood sugar, so it adds some flavor and some taste. That leads me to artificial sweeteners. So I have a few different health tips sprinkled in throughout these slides. So I'll sort of discuss like just a little health topic and then add a health tip in here. So I can tell a lot about what type of eater people are simply by their coffee order. The #1 recommendation I have for anyone I counsel is to cut out artificial sweeteners. So there's been a lot of talk in the media about this, you know, what it's healthy, it's good for you, it's not, it helps prevent diabetes. It's really hard to cut through all the junk and all the information that you get about nutrition. It's just really confusing. So, you know, the health benefits in general of artificial sweeteners are severely lacking. In fact, obesity rates have risen in parallel with the increased use of sweeteners such as NutraSweet, Equal, Splenda, Sweet and Low, all of these that are pictured in this image. These fake sugars are actually 100 to 1,000 times sweeter than table sugar, which can reset our taste buds and make us really crave and want sweeter and sweeter food. So simply put, artificial sweeteners stimulate taste receptors that sense sweetness. In the body, then, you know, we're anticipating an influx of energy or calories from sugar, so the pancreas releases insulin. Meanwhile, there are certain chemicals that are sent to your brain, telling it that, you know, the sugar has arrived. When the brain becomes confused, when the body doesn't actually receive these calories, so you may end up feeling even hungrier and less full as a result of consuming the sweetener. You know, in non-science speak, this means that if you have diet soda or sweeteners all day, you'll actually probably end up craving ice cream or sweets at night. You might be like, wow, that's me. So yeah, if you know, it's not easy to start. If you use 2 Splenda a day, try to use 1, then titrate it down to half. Then eventually you'll see that you don't even really crave it. And you'll notice that you can actually taste things again. So just to caveat that, some evidence does suggest that stevia and monk fruit are healthier options. They're technically more natural alternatives, but technically they are still highly processed products that are much, much sweeter than table sugar. So in my opinion, it's better to have small amounts of natural sources of sugar, honey, maple syrup, things like that. So hydration, another favorite topic. So when you don't get enough water, you feel lethargic, you can get a little foggy, you can get headaches and trouble focusing. Huge, huge, huge array of physical ailments have to do with dehydration. And the number one thing that I see actually in women is constipation, followed by headache and fatigue. So basically, water's main function is to flush waste and toxins from your body, but it also keeps you energized, gives your skin a healthy glow, and ensures your digestion is moving along. It also promotes satiety and prevents overeating. Your brain can send mixed signals about hunger and thirst. So staying hydrated is a key thing for weight management. In fact, dieters who consume 2 cups of water before meals, and I hate the word dieters, but people who consume 2 cups of water before meals tend to lose about 40% more weight than those who don't. Again, why water? You know, it increases our metabolism. There's so many benefits. How much is one of the most frequently asked questions I receive. So you want to think about half your body weight in ounces. So, if there were a 200-pound person, you'd want to be drinking 100 ounces of water per day. Using a refillable water bottle, like this one I have here, can be really helpful so that you know how much you're drinking. There are also tons of apps that can, connect to your smartwatch or your smartphone and remind you to stay hydrated throughout the day. So always great to say, oh, drink more water, but what are some, quick tips and tricks? And one that I use is I fill up a 16-ounce, ball jar or water bottle right next to my bed and drink it before I get out of bed in the morning. Doesn't always happen with my 2-year-old calling for me, but I try to, grab it and drink it as much as possible. You can think about that as a way to break your fast that happens naturally overnight. You can drink a glass of water before every meal. And at night, you can unwind with something like warm water and lemon or a cup of herbal tea. In regard to like flavored waters and vitamin waters, flavored water is generally okay, but again, most of them can contain artificial sweeteners. There's actually also no regulation on the term natural by the FDA. So, the naturally flavored waters, I love hint water, but you technically don't really know what's actually in it, and it can be highly processed ingredients. So regular filtered water is totally fine. Vitamin water is just sugar water. Sports drinks, again, I'm a huge runner and an athlete, and I love sports drinks, but only for exercise longer than an hour. Gatorade might be appropriate if you are sweating heavily in high heat or at a higher altitude, but again, we want to switch that up with water from time to time. I also choose natural options like coconut water. So again, breakfast. Another sort of like question that I get all the time. Do I really need to eat breakfast? And again, as I said in my little caveat in the beginning, there's not one way that works for everybody. But breakfast, in my opinion, is really important for focus, mood, energy, and weight maintenance. So in my practice, skipping breakfast, feeds into the saving up syndrome of what I call. So I promise what is consumed mid-afternoon or after dinner will probably, add up to more than what is consumed at breakfast time. I know intermittent fasting is a really hot trend right now. And the research is there to support that it can be beneficial for some bodies. But again, I caveat that it's not appropriate for everybody. So most people don't do it consistently. And I think it's best to start the day with something nutritious. So what to eat? 2 Ps, protein and produce. So protein is digested slower than carbohydrates, so you'll feel fuller longer. And produce, meaning fruits or vegetables, contain fiber, which again acts like a scrub brush in the intestine and helps to keep you feel fuller longer. Why you want to eat protein and produce? It helps prevent low blood sugar, and a higher protein diet decreases ghrelin or like the hunger hormone level, causing you to be less hungry throughout the day. So the optimal timing, I'd say, is within a few hours of when you wake up. With regard to eating and exercise, you don't have to eat pre-working out if it makes you feel sick, or you feel kind of, I don't know, it doesn't work for you, but some people require that. Just be sure to eat as soon as possible after your workout. So what good is talking about breakfast if I don't offer some, healthy options? Some of my favorite sweet ideas are oatmeal or overnight oats. Overnight oats, for those who don't know, is basically just like mashed banana, oats, little chia seeds, and some almond milk or whatever milk you prefer, mixed up and left in the fridge overnight. You can add tons of stuff in the morning to make it feel more filling, but there are tons of variations and tons of recipes on the internet. Smoothies, which is my personal favorite. I always add some sort of protein powder to this. And I actually don't have a slide on protein powder, but you want to rotate your protein powders. You don't want to be having the same one day after day. Right now, I really like collagen peptides because it's unflavored and doesn't take on the flavor of anything else, but there are some actually really good brands that offer unsweetened options. Paleo pancakes, this is, again, is something you can Google, but it's like eggs and banana mashed up and tastes like real pancakes. Yogurt, so whole milk yogurt, it has more fat, but it also has more protein. Choosing the plain variety is better, and then sweeten it, adding your own fruit. Energy muffins or bites, these are basically made from eggs, and you can mix in veggies. Very easy, and kids actually really like them. Huge fan of avocado toast, grab and go hard-boiled eggs, little egg frittatas, going a little savory with smoked salmon, high fiber crackers, or even peanut butter and fruit. It doesn't have to be a sit-down breakfast. I know that's not realistic for everybody, but just getting something in your system, even if it's just some fruit with like a little bit of nut butter, is a good way to start. So dietary fat. When I think about all the macronutrients, this is probably the most important for women. So dietary fat has been really controversial for years. People started to avoid fat back in the 70s due to warnings about cholesterol and decreased heart health. People who wanted to lower their cholesterol and triglycerides at that time had very, very different shopping lists than they do today. They had skim milk, egg whites and egg beaters, margarine, or a tub of I can't believe it's not butter. And those choices really seemed sensible at the time. Fast forward to 2021, where people are drinking full fat milk and eating multiple eggs with the yolks, and the sales of beef are through the roof. It's really confusing. So, regarding dietary guidelines, what are these new recommendations and why do the recommendations change? And I just think it's really difficult to take these recommendations from government organizations and try to translate them into actionable advice. So 20th century guidelines were based on the concept that heart disease was the result of a diet high in fat and cholesterol, resulting in low-fat dietary guidelines that were first published in 1977. These guidelines influenced every major health organization, whether it was governmental or, American Heart Association, and they were treated as the truth. So want to prevent heart disease, they said, better cut out the fat, the butter, the eggs, the red meat, and replace these with low-fat, industrially produced foods and products that were filled with the wonders of modern science. So artificial flavors, chemical additives. There was no debating it. Even science was claiming the same thing. So yet, as low fat became the norm and recommended foods were filled with high fructose corn syrup, trans fat, salt, and refined carbs, all the things it was meant to eliminate, obesity, diabetes, and even heart disease became more prevalent. So thank goodness, the dietary recommendations have changed over the years. As I say here, in 2015, the dietary guidelines changed to include healthy fats, things like avocado and you know, wild fish and nuts and seeds, whole eggs. And then again, we had another change for the 2020-2025 dietary guidelines that kept fat in the recommendations, but further modified with specific guidelines based on age ranges. So, you know, for women, dietary fat is crucial for hormone health. And in regard to fat, you know, it is important to be mindful of portion size. So, you know, if you enjoy eating eggs, you might want to limit to maximum of 2. You might want to limit your meat, especially if it's fattier, to about 4 ounces, and keeping butter, you know, within reason, about, I say, like a tablespoon or so. More isn't always better, and moderation, you know, as unsexy as moderation is not, or sorry, it is usually the best rule. So snacking, you know, over the years, I've had people say, you know, I don't snack, I'm so healthy. And I think that there is a time and a place for a snack strategy. You know, we often ride out hunger during the day because we're busy or we don't want to waste precious calories, but this isn't really effective energy management, and your body might be sending some loud signals to that effect. So not eating for more than 4 hours can actually kick your system into starvation mode. You know, you think of babies, you feed them every 3 to 4 hours, and our bodies don't really change that much from that initial state. The body actually starts conserving energy instead of burning it at that point. So I was going to identify a few different scenarios, all of which you should consider adding a healthy snack. So I've had some clients who are downing coffee all afternoon. You know, you need an upper, but you don't see hunger as the cause. So you ride the caffeine until dinner and then kind of end up overeating. Headaches or stomach aches. It's the body's primal scream. Your blood sugar levels dropping and your cells are pleading to be fed and hydrated. If you experience, you know, energy dips or mood swings in the afternoon, you feel like you're falling asleep at your desk mid-afternoon, it's a clear signal that the body needs fuel. And then raiding the pantry. You know, if you tend to be somebody who, you know, is snacking excessively in the afternoon or after dinner, maybe you need to have like something before your meal or schedule something earlier in the day so you can sort of prevent that hunger from happening. If you feel like you're overeating at meals or you feel overly full, maybe you need to have like a little mini meal before your actual meal. So yes, I think that there is a time and a place if you really need them. If you feel like you can't help yourself with snacks, I recommend sort of the HALT method, which I have HALT here. So you can ask yourself, do I really want that snack? Am I hungry? Am I angry? Am I lonely? Or am I tired? And if hunger is not the first answer there, then you can sort of pause, wait, you know, 15, 20 minutes and ask yourself that again. I'm a huge fan of survival kits. So, you know, creating little, you know, snack packets, whether that's in your car, your bag, just, you know, so you don't, you know, reach for sort of like the most convenient option that might not be the most nutritious. And when you're at home, put the snack on a plate, make it look nice. We eat with our eyes before we eat with our stomach. So, you know, make it look nice and don't just be grabbing it out of the package. And then what to eat. So let me just go to the next slide. So here's some of my favorite healthy snack ideas. What I like to do is try to pair something, you know, like packaged with something fresh. So it's all well and good if we could create these wonderful, beautiful snacks every day, but real life, most people don't have time or the energy to do that. So I like to create a little survival drawer of healthy, non-perishable snacks you can pair with fresh fruits and veggies or proteins or whatever you like. So this includes pre-portioned nut packs, nut butter packets, high fiber packets for people who can't do, nuts. Pumpkin seeds are great. Olives are another great source of healthy fat. So, you know, olives and some veggies are something good. Roasted chickpeas, crunchy, salty, that has protein and fiber in it. And, you know, as a follow-up to them, most people ask me about energy bars. So, you know, can I just have a bar as a snack every day? Quick answer is it depends. I wouldn't have a bar every day. I think this would be sort of more of your survival snack mode. And most bars are basically the equivalent of candy bars. So you want to be really judicious about what you're purchasing. So number one, always look at the ingredients. Skip any artificial sweeteners. Make sure you can identify all the ingredients on the label. So you basically want to go through the ingredient list and just make sure that you know what the ingredients are. And then, most people look at calories and think, oh, this is too much, this is too little. A snack should generally be, well, it depends, but I'd say anywhere between, 100 to 250 calories. But this can change based on your age, activity level, et cetera. But you want to make sure, I'd say look more at the protein and the sugar rather than the calories. So you always want there to be more protein than sugar. Okay, now that we are probably going out to dinner a little bit more often, people always ask me, I'm going out to dinner, I have client dinners, I'm just eating out, I can't control my weight, or, I can't find healthy options. So first thing, talk about the rule 1 out of 3. So typically you have a bread basket, drink, or dessert. Choose one. These are probably all things you've already had before, you've probably tasted it. Choose one, and then, you can always come back and visit the restaurant another time. Portions. So focus on the size of your fist and a smartphone, and we'll go through this in the next slide. So the smartphone, especially if you like a smaller iPhone, like this one, I'd say that's probably like a more realistic size for meat, for protein. For some women, even half that amount would be appropriate. And then about the fist, that's always sort of like how much a portion of carbohydrates would be. But the plate method might be something easier if you're cooking at home. So you can divide your plate in half, try to fill half with vegetables. And then, have a quarter be a starch, and then a quarter be protein. And then alcohol. What you drink and how often you drink are crucial variables when it comes to your health and weight. So while research shows that alcohol itself might not be that terrible for your weight, it can really affect your appetite. So the more you drink, the more your appetite will increase. I generally, if you choose to drink, 1 drink max on any given day is ideal. Interestingly, white wine, tequila, or vodka tend to have less of an effect on appetite than other alcohol. And, while drinks are often referred to as empty calories, many studies conclude that moderate drinking may not be as bad for your weight as you'd expect. But I usually recommend having a weekly budget of drinks and thinking about that and having a few nights where you're not imbibing. So protein, along with dietary fat, protein is really critical. Protein is necessary and needed for, recovery from illness and growth. It's a highly debated topic and has really come into, focus with the evolution of Atkins, and even now with higher protein and fat diets like the keto diet. Studies do show that a vegan diet is ideal versus a more paleo and protein focused diet. But there's a spectrum. Some people don't do so well with so many veggies and so much fiber. So that's sort of something to explore. But I usually recommend that people try to have at least 1 plant-based meal per day. So I think there's always a recommendation that you include protein at every meal, and a lot of people just default to having that be meat or fish or chicken or whatever it is. There's so many amazing plant-based sources. So beans, grains, lentils, nuts, seeds. Exploring there can be a really great option, especially for women. So how much you need daily really depends on, again, your weight, your activity level, your age. But I'd say 6 to 20 grams per meal. Nobody's calculating grams per meal. At least I hope not. I think that would really take away your enjoyment. But you can estimate. So thinking about, a serving size of 3 ounces is generally about the size of, like the inner palm of your hand. And then, a half cup to a cup, depending on the size of your fist, is appropriate for beans and grains. And what are the best sources? With protein, quality really, really matters. So you want to choose grass-fed beef, organic, cage-free, or pasture-raised eggs, wild fish, and then for vegetarian options, the seeds and the beans, lentils, and I recommend skipping all the, Impossible Burgers and plant-based meal replacements. It's just processed foods as well. And again, I like to caveat that not every budget allows for, the highest quality all the time. So, do your best and be judicious about what fits in your budget. So another topic that's really important is the gut. And I feel like people are always asking me, what does it mean about the gut and why is it so important? Our digestive systems for the gut are heavily influenced by what we eat, and they can, again, it's like another immune system for our body. So that's key during this time. Also, the gut is where we absorb and digest a lot of our foods and nutrients. So it's really key to make sure that it's functioning well. So things to avoid, refined sugar. So when your diet includes refined sugar, yeast and bad bacteria can flourish in our gut. Over time, this can lead to inflammation and even damage the lining of your gut. So reducing refined sugars as much as possible can be helpful. I don't know about you, but I'm a huge fan of bubbles and carbonation. I love seltzer, but some people really don't feel that good when they have carbonated beverages. So, if you notice that you've been having a lot of burping or indigestion or just bloating, try cutting out the bubbles and seeing if that changes anything. We've already talked about artificial sweeteners and sugar alcohols, but basically, they can lead your digestive system to sort of shut down. And again, if there's one change that you make, take that out. I promise you will feel better, you'll be less bloated, your metabolism will improve, and you'll see a drop in any sort of sugar craving. Food allergies. Again, I've worked with tons of people with food allergies, and it's important to understand that there's so many options for testing. There is one gold standard that physicians use, which is IgG testing. But again, if you feel like something doesn't feel good in your diet, try removing it, seeing how you feel for 3 to 4 weeks, and then try adding it slowly back in. You are your own best tool. You don't need fancy equipment to necessarily tell you that you have an issue unless it's sort of more of a life-threatening allergy. Leads me to dairy. Dairy is, as we age, basically our ability to digest the proteins in dairy decreases. So this is why most people have gas, bloating, constipation, diarrhea with dairy. But it is a great source of calcium and protein for many people. So if you feel like maybe dairy isn't making you feel so good, cut it out and see if your symptoms improve. Usually it takes at least 3 weeks to see if there's any sort of movement there. And there are tons of alternatives for dairy and gluten or whatever allergen you think might be hurting your gut. So another thing just to think about is volume control, or simply just eat less at one sitting. Even healthy foods, large salads, especially if you get them out, are typically enough to feed 4 people. And although it's healthy, it can expand your stomach and make you feel gassy or bloated, and also lead you to feel like you need to feel more full more often. Also, just to note, sort of while we're on salads or volume, you want to think about if cruciferous vegetables might be upsetting your stomach. So broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, kale. Those things can sort of, while they're super nutrient dense, they can wreak havoc on some people. So foods to include. I don't always like to talk about things to take out, but rather things to put in. So green leafy vegetables are incredibly healthy for the gut. Avocado and healthy fats help to lubricate the sides of the gut and help to absorb fat-soluble vitamins. Bone broth, it really does work. It's definitely great, especially if you're trying to heal from a sickness, or even if you're feeling dehydrated during the summer months. It's almost like having a sports drink or an electrolyte beverage. Probiotics, so having probiotic-rich foods like fermented vegetables or kombucha, it's a great way to get those nutrients in. And then supplements. You can always take a probiotic supplement. Again, consult with your doctor. Prebiotics, so these are the foods that feed the probiotic bacteria. Asparagus, fennel, dandelion greens. I've actually never found dandelion greens in the store, so that's a tough one to recommend, but asparagus and fennel are really good for this. There are some prebiotic supplements available on the market. However, note that there is very little research or data to back up taking those. Hot water with lemon. Again, it's a natural detoxifier, one of my favorite ways to sort of, improve gut motility. And then chia seeds. You probably wouldn't want to take chia seeds just straight, but you can make a little sort of like gel if you mix a tablespoon with like a cup of water. You can blend them into your smoothie or make a chia seed pudding, and they really help to sort of move things along. And then I just want to touch on bone health really quickly. So women as well as men need to be mindful of their bone health as they age. Osteoporosis can be exacerbated by depleted calcium from decreased hormone levels and decreased calcium absorption. So luckily, there are lots of things you can do about this. Most people know about weight bearing and weight training activity to promote bone density and for preservation of the bone mass that you have. However, there are lots of dietary measures you can take. So just from a lifestyle perspective, you can avoid smoking, excessive alcohol, which has a diuretic effect and can leach the calcium out, avoiding high sodium intake and high coffee intake. But you can also really focus on the combination of calcium, vitamin D, and vitamin K. Magnesium is looped in there as well. It's depleted by consumption of these particular things like caffeine, sugar, processed foods, and alcohol. It's also important to note that produce in our country is actually depleted, of magnesium from our soil. Bone health can, decrease as a result of taking too many supplements. So you always, if your doctor recommends that you take a calcium supplement, really check with them for the optimal dosage for your individual needs. And then, people who are lactose intolerant, which is the majority of the population, just basically avoid calcium-rich foods. So I, have a little table over here. So you want to try to get a mix of basically dark leafy greens contain calcium, vitamin K, and magnesium in general, and then pairing that with something with vitamin D. So most of the sources of vitamin D are fish or egg or milk based, but mushrooms are actually a great plant-based source. And then sleep. There's so many different lifestyle considerations, and I didn't even address physical activity really, except for one small bullet on this slide, but sleep is critical just for our overall health and well-being. So, creating a calm environment, no phones, computers, or bright lights before bed, avoiding large meals, cutting down on alcohol, eating more tryptophan-rich foods. So yes, you might think of tryptophan being in turkey at your Thanksgiving dinner, but it's actually an amino acid that helps the brain to get into a relaxed state, similar to serotonin and melatonin. And it's also present in carbohydrates like oats, brown rice, corn, and quinoa, as well as tart cherry juice and nuts and seeds. Also magnesium and calcium. So magnesium and calcium deficiencies may interrupt your sleep cycle. Calcium blood levels are actually the highest during your REM sleep cycles, and calcium, helps the brain use the tryptophan to create melatonin. So just in non-science speak, Magnesium is a really calming nutrient. There are some supplements that you can take, that can help to calm the body. You just want to be careful because this can also cause very loose stool if you take too much. Essential oils are really helpful. I love lavender oil in a diffuser, or even just sort of like dabbed on your neck or your wrist. And then exercise, consistent exercise can help to, make sure you're actually tired for the day. But questions, I just covered a lot. I think that Julie will be sort of moderating some questions, and I'm happy. I know I just sort of like breezed through a lot of really dense topics, so I'm happy to dive more into anything.
Yeah, Eliza, that was amazing. So many points and interesting pieces of information. I was taking some notes. So our first question is anonymous, but it says, hello, is there any overall food plan that you recommend? What are your thoughts on keto plans or the Mediterranean diet?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, if there's one thing that I recommend, it's more like the Mediterranean diet. I wouldn't recommend keto, especially for women. We have great resources for the Mediterranean diet on Very Well Fit. And it can walk you through diet plans and what to buy and, sort of what to be thinking about and what the science says.
Okay. And then from the chat, I know you covered this a little bit, but I'll ask, is there any issue with carbonated water? I know you mentioned bloating, but anything else?
So there has been some research about PFAs. Again, I don't know I can't think about exactly what that stands for right now, but there are some substances that can occur in certain carbonated waters that might also occur in other bottled waters. So again, I think it's just best to limit that. Again, if you're having like a can a day, it shouldn't be a bad thing, but like 100% of your hydration shouldn't come from carbonated waters.
Okay, and then from Sarah, is it better for your digestion to take a walk before a meal or after a meal?
Hey, Sarah. Again, I think you have to figure out what works best for your body. Walking typically shouldn't, affect anything if you're not moving too vigorously, but I'd say after a meal is probably preferable because you might be too hungry before a meal.
Okay, and Danita asks, the recent popularity of zero sugar sodas, an alternative to diet sodas, or to avoid those?
So when you think about zero sugar sodas, you want to think about what is going in to sweeten them. There are some more health conscious sodas that I know have come to market recently that have, purported health claims like probiotics or what have you. But again, just look at the ingredients. Again, if it's something that you're having multiple times a day, I'd say, probably not something you want to have, but if it's something you have once in a while, it might be okay.
Okay. And Margot asked about a good smoothie recipe that includes vegetables, probably frozen to keep it easy, and something to make for mom and kids to ensure to get veggies and fruits for the day.
Yeah, no, I mean, I make a smoothie basically every morning with my daughter. And now my husband's on board now too, which is great. But, you have to figure out what your family likes and what your taste preferences are. I find that spinach can be the easiest to incorporate to a smoothie without too much flavor changing. If you put kale in, it can kind of be bitter. Frozen cooked cauliflower generally doesn't change the taste profile too much. So again, we have tons of smoothie recipes on our site. I have a ton in my book. My favorite would be, I had one this morning. It was, like half of a frozen banana, about a half cup of blueberries, some chia, almond milk, a little bit of almond butter, and what else is in there? Just blend that up and cinnamon. You can put cacao powder, cacao nibs, tons of fun stuff.
Nice. Maybe Melissa could put information on your book into the chat because I don't think I've seen that, and that would be interesting if it includes that recipe.
Sure.
Yeah. So this is from Serena. We hear a lot about fiber and how it's linked to colon cancer. How much fiber should we be consuming daily?
Again, individual needs are based on, sort of like age and gender and activity level. So that's not something I would advise on. I would just try to make sure, instead of thinking about, like grams or, because it's kind of hard to compute that on a daily basis, just make sure you have some sort of fiber rich food at each meal that you're consuming. So fiber rich meaning like fruits, vegetables, whole grains.
Okay. And then I know we're recording the session, but a question is, can we share the deck? And I think Melissa will maybe answer that in the chat. I would imagine that.
I'm sure I can modify some parts of it and share it or create some sort of sheet for you guys.
Great. Okay. And then from Alyssa, what essential supplements would you recommend anyone to take?
Again, like this is so individual. So especially if you take prescription medication, you want to check with your healthcare provider because there can be tons of interactions. But in general, things that are mostly safe for people would be something like a probiotic, an omega-3 supplement, especially if you don't eat a lot of fatty fish. There's mixed research about multivitamins, about whether they're actually helpful, but I think that it's like a Band-Aid. It can be helpful if you take it from time to time, and we don't all eat 100% perfectly every day. And so it can be something good to fall back on. So probiotics, omega-3, and a multivitamin.
Okay. And then from Elizabeth, what do you think about needing calcium supplements? Can the average person get enough calcium, for example, by drinking 2 glasses of milk per day?
Again, I think that depends on your calcium needs. So I would always talk with your doctor about calcium supplements and if it's necessary.
Okay. And you may have mentioned this one, but Carolyn asked, why don't you like keto for women? And I know you touched on it, but.
So it can be helpful for some women. I think that most women don't do it consistently. So they'll eat keto throughout the week. And then on the weekend, they'll go out with their friends, they'll have a bunch of drinks or French fries. And so ketosis is a very strict cycle where you're basically depleting the body of carbohydrates and switching the metabolism from metabolizing sugars to metabolizing fat as fuel. And if you're cycling between being in keto and then being out of keto, it can really mess up your metabolism in the longer term. Again, I'll caveat that some people do really well and feel like they have increased energy and they just function better. But I would say just instead of going strict keto, try a little bit higher fat diet with smaller portions of proteins and carbs.
That's really interesting. Thank you. And then from Penelope, can you share insight in lowering A1C?
Right. So the A1C is a measure of the blood sugar fluctuations over the prior 3 months. So basically, if you want to lower that, you want to reduce your intake of processed sugars and carbohydrates. Again, I think, being mindful of what you're consuming, maybe keeping a food journal to think about, what you are consuming on a daily basis and maybe reducing portions or frequency. There's tons of information of that on the A1C topic, or just like pre-diabetic diets very well fit as well.
Okay. And I know you mentioned kombucha, but Lisa asked on bottled kombucha or other fermented bubblies.
Yeah, I love kombucha. I think it's so tasty. Some of the drinks, so to make kombucha, you need to have sugar for the bacteria to actually like thrive and live on. However, some drinks or beverages add tons of added sugars. I would just, look for something. I really like GT's Health Aid. They have a ginger one that's fantastic, GT's and Health Aid, they're 2 different beverages. And just look for a lower sugar product. Again, that's something maybe you don't drink it every day, but it's just part of your hydration strategy.
Okay. And from Catherine, what types of foods or snacks should runners eat pre and post runs?
Awesome. I love running. I'm actually 7.5 months pregnant right now, so I'm not running. But when I get back to running, and hopefully we can all get back to races, foods or snacks to eat pre-run and post-run. So pre-run, I would say my favorites are like banana with peanut butter or something with a little bit of carbohydrates in it. You want to get 15 to 30 grams of carbs before you're exercising or running in particular. And then after runs, you want to focus on more protein with a little bit less carbohydrates. So you need to replace your glycogen stores after you've been running and rebuild the muscle with protein. But again, I also think, think about what you enjoy having and what really feels good for your body.
Okay, and I have a legacy to follow in terms of being on time. And so it looks like we have a minute left, and there is a request for you to put up the bone health slide. And sure. In that time, I'm just going to scroll down and see if there's anything else we should be covering. We do have a post-event survey that we would like everyone to fill out. And so Melissa provided the link in the chat. So that would be great. And then
probably stop my screen, but yeah, and also you can also feel free to email me if you go to ElizaSavageNutrition.com or just email Eliza at ElizaSavageNutrition. I'm not currently taking on new clients, but I can always point you in the direction of someone, especially other Trinity alums who are also dietitians working nationally or and virtually. Or just try to help point you in the right direction. But thank you.
Excellent, Eliza. This was wonderful. So much good information. And I want to thank all of our participants for coming and attending our Lunch and Learn. So thank you.